Hey guys, we are back. I told you I'm going to be on a schedule. Anyway, today we are talking about Xmen Apocalypse. So I put this as the third movie um in the X-Men timeline. Now there's a reason for that. Number one being we already see Jean as part of the school, right? We saw her in the last movie in Dark Phoenix, although technically they say that's the sequel. Anyway, it came out after this one. This one was done in 2016, I believe. Hold on, let me just double check that. I want to be accurate, guys. I swear I just read that too. Yes, this one came out in 2016. The other one came out in 2019. So even though Dark Phoenix is set as the sequel, in terms of majority of like I guess it would be really more of a plot hole because we see Jean already at the school, right? I mean, to be fair, the Dark Phoenix is more of Jean Grey's origin story, whereas this one is a little bit, you're kind of going in between a lot of different characters. We do meet Scott Summers, who will become one of Jean Grey's love interests. He's, brought to the school. We also meet some other new characters like Ansaba Noor, who is Egypt or one of the. Hold on, let me just go back to what I had written here. He is a mutant from ancient Egypt. He is considered. Sorry, so the four horsemen, right? Those are his four followers, the horsemen of the apocalypse. That's what he's known as. And then we're kind of jumping timelines to 1983. So it's kind of confusing, right? We go from 3600 BC to 1983. And this is when in 1983 we meet teenage Scott Summers. He's learning about his powers. His brother takes him to Professor Charles Xavier's school, etc. Right? So then we have. So during this time, let me just say this. During this time, Ansaba Noor was in this like coma, or I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, Myra, who we learned in X-Men, the first one I did, she is she woke him. She woke him. She was a CIA agent, and he meets other mutants like Aurora Monroe, who controls the weather. He finds Eric Lesnar, who is aka Magneto, and his wife and daughter. We have like a whole bunch of other mutants. Not all of them are going to be super popular throughout the X-Men universe, but we do have Kurt Wagner, right? We do have Cyclops, we have Angel still. We still have Charles Xavier. Oh, we meet. Okay, this one's super important, right? So, a lot of people think that X-Men and Marvel, like MCU, wasn't linked prior to, I believe it was Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Okay, there were some things, and then we had a connection in we had a connection in WandaVision, and then we also had a connection in the Marvels. However, and this is going to be super important for one of our Easter eggs, we come across Peter Maximoff. Now, if you know anything about the comics, Peter Maximoff and his sister Wanda, or Petro Maximoff as they call him in the MCU, in X-Men he's Peter, whatever, doesn't matter. We learn that these twins are Magneto's children. So he learns this in this movie. Now, I'm not going to give too much away because a lot else happens, but Peter is played by Evan Peters. Funny. Peter Maximoff is played by Evan Peters, the same Evan Peters who was in WandaVision as her brother. I forgot about that. Like, I was rewatching, I was like, oh my god, like, what the heck is he doing here? And then it made sense. Like, I was like, but I felt like he played another character, but no, like, he was actually in this. I also want to say that Evan, oh god, what was it, Agatha? Was he in Agatha? I want to say he was in Agatha as well. Let me just Google it real quick. I swear he was in Agatha all along. He does. He does appear in Agatha all along in episode 6 as Rolf, or aka Billy Maximoff. In a scene, he makes a cameo in a scene with Billy. Billy is the kid who's like going through all this. So he's Rolf Boner in Agatha all along. And that's who I couldn't remember who it was. And I'm trying to think of. So Ralph really was Petro or Peter, but Ralph was his not his It was to throw off Wanda in WandaVision. We'll get to all that, but it was basically the character to throw off Wanda that they weren't really related because of Agatha's magic. Throwing that out there because I was like, there's something linked with the Easter egg. So yeah, we have a lot in this, like, backstory that's going to come up to link X-Men timeline and the Marvel MCU timeline. And that is super important because this came out in 2016. So we are a decade, 10 years of, hey, we got this timeline. And this is why it's super important because we've already had this and nobody's clocking it. I'm clocking it. It's me. Okay. Why nobody clocked in the beginning, I don't know. But again, super important. So with that being said, we're going to dive in to the Easter eggs and I'll see you at the very end for more information. So we're starting off in 3600 BC in Egypt. And then we are set in 1983. This is 10 years after the Vietnam War. Just for a heads up, we also have Nightcrawler, who we really get to know more of in the X-Men original movies. And as I said in the intro, we meet Scott Summers, and he really befriends Jean Grey, and Scott learns how to use his powers. Anyway, Charles Xavier is still using Cerebro. It's been updated, and here we have a moment where he's using it and he sees that Moira, who was the CIA agent, awoke what's his name? The evil guy, the main villain in this story. I've already lost my thoughts on this. So even on the news, we see that it's been 10 years since Vietnam War, and they show Magneto, and this is going to be really important to the story about, there is a history here, right? There has been a history between Magneto and Xavier, And again, they do care about each other, but in a weird way. Anyway, our main villain, who is the head of the Four Horsemen, brings Magneto back to Auschwitz, and he's calling upon his four horsemen to be destructive. Anyway, things are happening, and on the news, we are hearing that Magneto is being harmful again and to call your local authorities instead of handling it yourself. But here we have Peter Maximoff, who, if you guys don't remember, although this movie came out before the show WandaVision, he does play Peter Maximoff in WandaVision. But in the MCU, Peter Maximoff, or Petro Maximoff, is played by... Hold on, guys. Pietro Maximoff is played by Aaron Taylor Johnson in Avengers Age of Ultron. So it is going to be important to remember that it is the character is played by someone else. However, majority of the time, he is played by Evan Peters in X-Men. We also see a nod to Miss Pac-Man, hey, 80s. And we have a nod to Star Wars, hey, linking it because the Disney Pixar theory doesn't just link Disney movies and Pixar movies, it links the MCU, it links Star Wars. So hey, there you go. Ha, told you guys. However, on that note, just like in Captain America, the first Avenger, right, I believe it was the first Avenger. No, maybe it was the second Captain America. Anyway, just like in one of those movies, we see that Star Wars is seen as a movie franchise. So is it movies within a movie? I mean, it's not the first time that a movie has been within a movie, hence, Lightyear within Toy Story, right? Just throwing that out there. So this is the moment where Peter is telling Raven that he found out that Magneto is actually his father, aka Peter and Wanda Maximoff are Magneto's children. Super important to remember that this is MCU, right, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, meeting with X-Men. Now, granted, X-Men comics are under Marvel, but it's not quite in the MCU per the movies. Now, we do have Charles and the team, the X-Men team, fighting off the villainous mutants, aka Magneto and his crew. And we see that Charles is struggling to use his powers to do the right thing, and they're trying to protect him in this tomb thing. I don't know how to describe it. We also see the Dark Phoenix mark, which now again, technically the movie The Dark Phoenix is supposed to be the sequel, but also the timeline it coincides and is really the backstory to Dark Phoenix, so it doesn't make sense it's a sequel, but really a prequel. Anyway, I digress. We see Raven saying, "You're an X-Men." We do know Raven leaves the team of X-Men to be with Magneto, right? She does end up on Magneto's team eventually, per the original X-Men movies when Rebecca Romijn played Raven, aka Mystique. Lastly, we see that there is blood from, I forget what mutant, and they are holding it and bringing it to Essex Corp. This will come back up in other X-Men movies, but I also wonder if somehow this weapon, right, it says a Weapon X, it's the blood of mutant, right, not only comes up into play in the movie Logan, my theory, or is part of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Could be both, could be one, could be neither. I guess. But I really do think that this will come back up into play in the movie Logan, which is kind of set in like a different universe slash in the future. It's hard to explain, but yeah, that's just my theory. All right, so if you've watched this movie, who is your favorite character? I always really love Scott Summers. I'm not gonna lie, like, even in the original, I love his timeline. I also like Kurt Wagner. Um, there's just something about certain characters and their understanding and their kindness um, that I always really enjoyed with these two. That being said, that is the end of the video. If you haven't already, go ahead and press like, subscribe if you haven't already, hit that bell button, and I will see you guys at least Wednesday for another Easter egg video. I'm going to try to upload a book review for tomorrow. Trying to trying to get ahead of myself, but yeah, I'll see you guys very, very soon.